Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing Live Show number 159. My apologies on the delayed start. I had a tech issue. All of a sudden, the webinar platform was not opening up for those who were here before or on time, and I wasn't. Thank you for being here on that. I literally went over and went in and was like, oh, this, and anyway. So technology works and it's great when it does, but unfortunately, when it doesn't, it creates some issues for it. I'm going to send over to my co-hosts the fact that we are back to being live. So give me just a moment while I do that. For everyone else, hello and welcome to the show. I am pulling up our topics that Robert was generous enough to go over and give us, and we'll have some things to talk about. But I want to talk about, I just was in New Orleans for the Interstate Conference, their sales and marketing conference to be exact. And it was a lot of fun, actually. It was great. They Mike Wiley, my former partner from Standing Dog Days in Dallas, went over and was gracious enough to invite me to speak to the independent hotel group that they have in their portfolio. They're 563 or 23 hotels in their portfolio. The 22nd largest hotel group, according to Hotels Magazine. I just was actually reading that on the plane on the way back. As always with any of these things, the amalgamation and accumulation of multiple brands, multiple agendas, multiple ownerships makes it quite interesting for people when it comes to herding them to all in one single direction. And I think their direction is world domination, is what their CEO said at their opening conference. So I drink a little coffee while we do this. So with that, let me get this started over here. There we are. And since I'm doing this solo, my apologies for having to keep you waiting for while I turn things on for all of us. Now, there we go. All right. So with that in mind, some of the topics that Robert had given us, which were wonderful. Well, actually, I digress. Let me go back to a little bit of what we were doing beforehand, which was the discussion points associated with the conference. I find it particularly interesting that I tailor each of my presentations to who it is that I'm presenting to. But there are certain core things that I am repetitive about because I believe the message still has to be on a soapbox on some of these things. And every chance and opportunity I get, I like to remind people of the fact that our world is as it is. And in spite of itself, we have to make changes with it. And that is the fact that there is an integration requirement associated with digital marketing and also with revenue management, that there is this merger. In most of other industries, there is no segregation between the two. But as hospitality is a bit sometimes, well, it is a slow transition industry when it comes to adopting new things. We started on the wrong foot. And because of that, it's taking us longer to get back on the right foot, the ability to coordinate our marketing and revenue management together. Retail doesn't make that distinction between the two. Their revenue opportunities are completely incorporated into their marketing philosophies, and their marketing strategies are completely intertwined with their revenue goals. But we as an industry, because we started revenue management from the perspective of reservations, the old reservations managers, as we used to refer to them back in the day, and they eventually grew up into the revenue managers that we see today. And even that has been shifting as to what makes a revenue manager a success. Is it a data-driven expert that has no hospitality experience that's really about the number crunching and the evaluation of the performance associated with the number crunching? Or is it somebody that's from hospitality that understands that the rates and ratios associated with occupancy and ADR are tailored to the consumer's sentiment and demand for the product that they have provided for? And that's always a struggle from that side too. As it matures, as the perspective of what a good revenue manager is matures, it also is maturing into the world, the fact that the marketing understanding has to be a part of that equation as to what a good revenue manager is. Understanding what tools are available and what data is available to exercise those tools to the revenue manager. Now, I used to be, when this discussion first came on, an adamant believer that the leader of that conversation, out of the little voices in someone's head, should be the marketer. That the marketing should drive the revenue strategy because they are more sensitive and in tune with the demands of the market, the consumer, the guest, the heart of the servant, what it is that we're providing to as a product to those. But I've since changed a little bit in the idea that it's not one versus the other in the sense of lead of opportunity as it is the value of what it is that has to be decided. And I say that from the perspective that revenue management is a horizon line. It is where you want to be. We need these monies, these cash flows to exist. We need that income to be a profitable business. Profitable business at first is making sure that all your costs are covered and that your staff and team are compensated and you have the funds to do that. Then from there it goes into the ability to provide a return of value or a reward in a way to those people that invested the monies to begin with to create the business that is operating, the hotel that is operating. So bottom line to the ownership, whether it be a public company or a private company, the goal is that you provide the value of why people took their hard-earned money and give it to you or to be running a hotel. So with that in mind, revenue management has to create that horizon line of knowing what numbers need to be made and attained from the revenue sources of the operation for it to be effective. Now, that being said, the first and early decisions as to whether or not to even build a hotel have to be based on market as to why there are the demands that they are to justify the costs associated with the investment opportunity of building a hotel in existence. Now, I bring that up because, in all honesty, one of the greatest challenges associated with hotels is shifting markets. Hold on just a moment. And what I mean by that is a hotel was built for one particular reason, whether it be next to a large employer or because of a certain traffic pattern, and that changes. And all of a sudden, the hotel finds itself in a position that it was built for that is no longer needed for. And this comes from, it doesn't have to be a limited service property. It doesn't have to be a small property. It can be quite a large property. I've dealt particularly with hotels that were very large and fully flagged, that the shifting tides of business acumen as to where they were positioned, the business community shifted geographically. And all of a sudden, they found themselves in a bit of a business wasteland that once was a very thriving small business commerce center around it, now went somewhere else. And they were surrounded by growing residential, which has no life cycle to that of a hotel in the sense of perpetual business travelers. Instead, it's more related to friends and family visiting and so forth, and needing a place to stay because you don't want them to stay with you. So it changed the demand cycle for them. And they had to redefine what they were. And this is a problem that some hotels have. It's like going back to the purpose of its existence. Now, if it hadn't changed, then it's re-identifying yourself with the original reason why that building was built there. Sometimes hotels become vicious and they chase down rabbit holes, and what they were built for isn't what they strive for because they think they're optimizing themselves, and then they find themselves distancing themselves from the very source of their creation, treating their prime guests lesser than they should be because they're looking for other new business and they forget where their bread is buttered, basically. And then you have the hotels that are faced with the little fact that things have changed. Either way, you have to reevaluate who walks in your door. And that's where marketing comes in. And marketing is crucial to redefining and identifying the source of the opportunities that revenue creates the horizon line for. So I don't really say that digital marketing or marketing, and I keep referring to marketing now not as digital because, in all honesty, it's just marketing now. Digital, the distinction of digital compared to the overall perspective of marketing is, we refer to it as traditional marketing, but really traditional marketing is influenced by digital marketing as well. And so because of that, it's all one thing. It's still all marketing. So with that in mind, marketing has to make sure that it keeps clarity as to where their business sources are coming from. Hey, Mr. Ed.
Hey, after clicking on 3 different invitations that you sent for this show, I finally found the one that let me in.
Hey, I found something out. If you don't indicate correctly AM or PM, Webinar Jam may not actually have your webinar ready. When I made this schedule, and it was a flaw of mine, I rushed through it. I left PM.
Can you respond with Robert? Because he just sent an email saying his links aren't working.
Yeah, I'll tell him to go back to the original link. Hold on just a moment. Where is Mr. Cole's email there? Here we are. Let me go back to everyone. Anyway, I was pontificating on my mainstays of when I travel. I always try to take the opportunity of the convergence value associated with marketing and revenue management because even though I think it's a mainstay of understanding for everyone, not everyone understands it. So I was kind of defining why our industry is laggard behind all other industries that don't make that distinction, that there's a separation between marketing and revenue management. And why it's important that you look at the two as being the same, with whoever answers the question best is because that's the person that has to be the authority to it. It's not, I used to think that marketers should lead revenue managers early on when we first started talking about the combining of the two. And now I realize it's not an either or, it's an and. There are times where marketing has to define the methodology because they're the knowledge base of the source of business. And then there's times where revenue management has to define the horizon line for the achievable goals associated with the business objective. So it's a melding of the two and not an either or to it. Go to the.
I don't think they should be separate people.
No.
I think we should look at other industries that, call it e-commerce.
Right. And then I was even making the comment, I stopped referring to it as marketing anymore. I mean, digital marketing, right. It's marketing. They're making the distinction of digital is silly, because even if you look at traditional methodology, it is still influenced by technical digital tools. If you want to still send out a paper piece, to mail, snail mail, you're still going to use methodology of who you're defining to send that to. You're still using it to create this. So the distinction is not necessary anymore.
The channel shouldn't define your title.
Sometimes you should not let certain people into the group.
That's what I use to get onto this thing.
Yeah, dude, I'm so sorry. I was telling you.
I had to get those people chanting that. We slaughtered a goat, and the connection finally worked.
Oh, I thought it was because college football's back. So I thought that was
actually the rain chant from Woodstock. So.
No, I went over and I was telling Ed, I said, I love to blame it that the software fluked or something, but it was the error between the keyboard and the floor. When I made the schedule for the show this week in my haste last week, I forgot to change it to AM, not PM. So the link was, oh, you've already finished. And it's like, no. And so I had to go in and I made I made a second one thinking, oh my God, I screwed up and make it a second one real quick and send it out to everybody. Then I realized, let me see if I just go over and change it back to AM, whether it kicked the original link alive.
Yeah,
and it did.
Thanks for letting me know on trying to get into 159.
I was doing it at the last minute. I was like, I'm making a coffee. I'm like, oh, it's all cool. It's something right here. And I start doing it, but I'm like, what the frick is this?
A little usability tip. Normally, the latest update you get is the one that should be working that people would actually use.
Yeah, I think you just go back to it.
Not the first one with the 3 other cents. Yes.
Yeah. And I do, and I apologize. I'm going to go over and actually, if you guys can talk amongst yourself for a minute, I'm going to kick over to our Facebook and make the same comments that are over there and get that thing live. So because this was all consuming, like, oh my God, the show dead. Oh my God. So anyway, Robert, thank you again for the topics that you sent out today. Actually, I had fun with reading a couple of them that I didn't even know existed. So
you read a couple in advance. Wow, that's very cool. That's not normal.
Yes, I read a couple of them to get started.
That's good. Hey, I can talk about the Hotel Data Conference from last week.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that since you were there?
Actually, unfortunately, Tim's not here, and he gave some excuse that he had something with a client. I actually think he's probably getting some sort of a restraining order. I mean, he was stalking this woman, a senior executive with Wyndham Hotel Group, who's a very professional woman. I've known her for. He was following her around most of the conference, and
I think they stayed together in the same hotel room.
Oh my God!
Yeah, gossip.
I was going to say, I mean, she's sitting down in one of the rooms looking at a breakout session. Here would come Tim coming in late, making some excuse that he had a phone call, sitting down right next to her. Happened repeatedly. I don't know. It was just a little bit creepy. And you could tell she was upset too, handling it very professionally, but you could tell she was visibly creeped out by this guy hanging around.
We might want to tell people whom Tim is married to, so they don't think that Tim has turned into this Me Too movement person.
Tim Peter is married to Tammy Peter, who is the senior executive with Wyndham Hotels, and this is Tim's punishment for not coming on the show and putting some sort of client deadline ahead of us.
No one's going to see this fun thing because
they're going to see it. I'm pushing it now. Oh no, you can't say that now. It's going global now.
Oh, okay.
So, Robert, tell us about the conference.
Yeah.
It was good. It's one of the nerdier conferences, which is great. So lots of data getting thrown around. Only a couple panels which were excessively fluffy, which Tim and I were kind of DMing each other on Twitter, just going, "Oh my God, this is not good." But only a couple. And actually, one thing that was great to counter what I was saying earlier. The conference did a great job of getting women on stage as keynoters, that sort of thing. I mean, in many cases, the ratio was more women than men, which is fantastic. And so they did an excellent job. Other conferences need to pay a little bit more attention to it, because the women they had up there weren't just, oh, let's be gratuitous and put some up because we should. It's like, yes, there should not be any difference, sort of thing. So industry is finally getting there, but kind of hats off to Jeff Higley and those guys, who I think we're focusing on that, and did an excellent job with great panelists regardless of gender. So that was good, and I was happy. My session, I gave a little talk using some Flip2 data. As well as some Lumio Analytics data on
Flip2 data. Flip2, what?
Yes, Flip2 has data. No one knew.
Isn't that one of them upstart companies that's still working out of WeWorks or something? What? Flip2. Well, yeah,
it's a fancy WeWork.
Yeah,
it's a fancy WeWork.
It is. I mean, they have styled their management style as kind of a Soviet era gulag and
That's
sort
right.
of thing. But again, it's easy. The guy, I hear the guy who's running it's doing it really old school. So
Super old school.
yeah.
No computers. It's all typewriters.
Monkeys and typewriters. They'll get it right.
And typewriters. Put enough in a room.
Are they at least IBM Selectrics? Are they at least IBM Selectrics? And they're not the old hammer style?
Smith Corona. He's going really old.
Yeah, okay.
What are the ones with the circular mechanical keys that had like the arm?
Yeah, the armature.
Yeah, that's a Smith Corona. Those are the original.
Just understand, like, when I was in school, typing class was taught on a keyboard that went to a computer.
I had 7th grade typing class on basically one. I don't think it was a Selectric. It was not.
I think it's funny they don't teach typing anymore.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, because people get their keyboard skills, but it's mostly thumbs, I think, for kids. So
yeah.
But anyway, my session, which was talking about the basically Instagram metrics, because it was only a little short 25-minute session, and looking at some influencers. So we basically talked about one particular influencer who seems to have, at least according to Lumio, about 28% ghost accounts. I did check another thing that does a quick little lookup, and they said 48% fake accounts. So we'll see. That may be a little study I'll do and go publish on FocusWire or something like that.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Just call out just go, hey, here's some metrics of the top 10 people, but kind of juxtapose that against how the basically kind of 10 kind of larger and mid-scale influencers, compared that with the hotel groups of how kind of their Instagram accounts are stacking up from an engagement perspective, which was about 50% the level of, and these were luxury hotel groups. I mean, we're talking Aman, Banyan Tree, Four Seasons, Ritz, all those guys. Their engagement's about half of what some of these influencers are.
Hey, Robert, real quick question. I mean, it's been now a couple of years, to say the least, that I haven't been to it, and I know they changed from their old venue to their new venue.
And then they're changing next year too. They had 693 people. I think they had a waiting list of over 70.
Wow.
So they were pretty much maxed out, and they moved originally from the Lowe's over to the Omni, and they're going to the JW Marriott next year, I think, for size. So they're
wow, that's impressive. Has it shifted in the sense for me, I'm in a time bubble, because when I was there, it was a very tight knit. You knew just about everybody. It was only a couple of hundred people, maybe 300 at the time max, maybe just, I don't know. And it was kind of like a welcome home week kind of thing. It was kind of like the digital conferences for HSMAI in February, but more for revenue and so forth. And the vendors were in small tables on the atrium side. It was a very tight area and so forth. Has the feel of it changed? Like now it's big thing.
Oh yeah, it's bigger. The production values have increased. You know, big screens. You know, larger room, even a third screen for the people in the back. You know, the colored backdrop and things like that. So yeah, they've done all that. They had lots of vendors, and you really have the gamut from, you know, kind of the CBREs and you know, STRs certainly. You know, kind of the pure data guys. Or the performance analytics guys, statistical overall P&L guys, I guess. And then you had all the, you know, certainly the Duettos and ideas and the revenue, you know, strong revenue management focus, and then a lot of other folks, you know, OTA Insight, tons of other, you know, other groups, you know, they're presenting. So it might be it was good. I mean, you had even, you know, Sabre had a little booth. Yeah, it was pretty well, you know, represented, and I think all their sponsorship slots were filled. So yeah, they were doing a good job. So yeah, and
nice.
the content was good. Yeah, overall, and it ran. It's actually now 2 days instead of well, I shouldn't really say 2 days. They have a kind of a pre-program during the first day, which does some things, and then the event at night, and then rolls in. Oh no, it was 2 full days. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was actually Thursday.
Again at the conference.
No, it was actually a day. It was a day and a half.
One was kind of like, you know, a Scotch day. Day 2 was kind of like a bourbon day or something.
That's right. Exactly. No, so they had actually Wednesday night. That's right. I got my days mixed up. Wednesday night, they had the opening reception, and then had a kind of a little play-in sort of thing with some seminar type deals. Then Thursday was all day, and then Friday was basically from like 8:30 to 2 or something like that. So it's kind of a half day so people could get out. Yeah, and it seemed to work pretty well. Friday was actually, attendance dropped off, but it wasn't as precipitous as I was imagining it might be. But yeah, some people, you know, a good chunk of people dropped off on Friday to make flights back. But Nashville, you know, has enough. You know, they've got enough lift where you can get back. You know, pretty much to major cities. You know, same day if the conference ends at 2. So anyway, who knows? I'm not sure. Next year, they've also moved the conference around. I think it's in August again. It had moved into September, and I think they're back in August, but I'm not sure if they're going to do a Tuesday through Thursday. They might. That's probably a little bit better pattern for them. So anyway, but it was a good overall conference. Highly recommended.
Thursday, is always the best for conferences. Yeah. One of the things that's killed me is we've started doing vacation rental conferences, which happen to get thrown over weekends most of the time. And gosh, I hate going to weekend conferences. Like, I'm away from my family enough. I don't want to be away from them on the weekend. You know?
Yeah,
Tuesday. Yeah,
those are tough. Oh, one other change is they used to be the last probably 3 years, and I hadn't gone for about 3 years. They changed to heavily pay to play. On the, you know, if you got a sponsorship, you got a slot on a panel, sort of thing. They changed that, and much to the better.
Did they? Thank goodness, because that's what stopped me from speaking there. I used to speak pretty persistently, and then they wanted to make sure that you had to pay to participate. I'm like, I ain't paying to participate. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go sponsor something and then go do it. And you wound up getting kind of, you know, sponsors
sales
who just
pitches.
weren't really, and they weren't really expert in that area. They just wanted to get on a stage in a panel somewhere, and they just weren't offering much. So
yeah, you know, like it's got to be tough because, you know, on one hand, they need to produce revenue to be able to continue letting the event get bigger and bigger. On the other hand, you end up with a lot of times, like, these events aren't big enough to justify sending multiple people from the same company. So you end up with, like, the company deciding, like, all right, well, the salesperson will be the one who speaks. And the salesperson, like, you know, it's rare that you're going to get the salesperson to be the knowledge leader of like, you know, education. And so
and these groups had a lot of people. I mean, there were certainly people sending multiples. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
I heard
very
that
good.
there was some weird guy on stage talking about statistics and so forth and numbers and data. Anybody come to mind for you, Robert, on that one?
That's good. It's certainly a good conference for geeks. Even better than the revenue management conference, than Rock for geeks, I think.
Yeah. Actually, your ears should have been burning this past week. Holly was very gratuitous with her thoughts of both of you, actually, including Stuart and Tim, who is not here, to a lot of salespeople at the Interstate Conference that she invited me to do the trainer program.
Oh, is that what you were doing in New Orleans? We were wondering why we weren't invited. Okay.
I was doing a bender. I was just doing a bender. It's like, hey, we're a better place. Pick a drinking city. There, New Orleans. Yeah. No, it was the Interstate Conference, their sales and marketing conference, and she impressive. And this is to give accolades to Holly. So they drag in hundreds of people for the Interstate. I mean, they're the 22nd largest according to Hotels Magazine.
Yeah.
And they have 563 or something hotels, and they just absorbed a few others. And the entire 2-day series, Holly's training was 3/4 of everything. So they spent, I don't know, to drag that many people in, you're probably talking about $500,000 to bring everybody in. Flights and travel and blah, blah, blah. I mean, of course, they're charging the hotels to do it. But all the training was Holly's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe they could afford that. Was Holly charging them enough? Maybe that was.
I don't think Holly was charging them enough, I'll tell you that. But,
I mean, here's the thing that's crazy. Like, if you think about that from a value perspective, if a company like Interstate sees that much value in Holly's content and everything, man, what she does for HSMAI, they're lucky.
They're real lucky. Yes, because I mean, she really was sweet. She has a new program that she put together called the Influencer Program, and then she did it as a preempt last year and really geared it up for this year. And it's a whole day, 7 hours. Imagine listening to me for 7 hours. And it was incredible content. And she put that whole thing together. Every salesperson was in those breakouts. We had 4 of us with about 90 people each room, or 100 or 80 in the room or something each. And it was all day that the training was going on. And really strong, good. You forget all the little mechanical parts to the sales team because we've been so focused talking about marketing, revenue management, blah, blah, blah. The sales is that quote unquote order taker, the person that sits in the room or whatever. And they really been kind of ignored when it comes to training or bringing them up to speed on stuff. And Holly put together a really killer program that literally brought them up to speed. It's like, this is new tools, new techniques, new methodologies, new perspectives. And that was what the 7 hours were. So it was good stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Go Holly. Is that why she doesn't come on the show anymore?
I think pretty much. Yeah.
Time. Too big time for us now.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. She grew past us. It's yeah. She won't spend time. We did go out to eat.
Pretty much, with Tim, Valen, Stuart.
I did find out that she doesn't like coconut. I don't know why.
What?
Yeah. Doesn't like coconut.
Not uncommon. I mean, that's not uncommon though.
I
know a lot of people who don't like coconut. I like coconut.
Really? Oh,
and
that's okay.
And she loves cheeseburgers. I love.
That's not uncommon either.
I know.
That's like, I realized, on this trip with Holly,
she likes dogs too.
That she breathes air. I mean,
yes,
it's an insight. She breathes air.
Yeah, it was. Well, this is a tolerance of the wife, but yes, it's. We actually had a lot of fun. It was fun. It was, what it is. It's with any opportunities. Like, even though we talk a lot and so forth, it's great to be able to have a meal together and to hang out and talk where you don't. It's not about some reason. It's just sitting around talking and so forth. She is sharp as a whip. My God, the insights she has.
It took you this long to figure that out.
Compared to the gym people on this show, I mean, my God.
No, it's really refreshing when, it's like the revelations that we pop up with once in a while, but she just has a really cool insight to stuff. I mean, I keep telling, I gave her grief about the fact that you just need to be on the show more, not just in the back wings or in the chat box, but you need to be on the show because she has she's like Tim in a lot of ways where she just cuts to the point. She gets to the core of what's really being discussed, not what's being discussed around it. And she does a phenomenal job of that because it's represented in the work she did putting these training things together where some people would look at it as an insurmountable task, and she dissected it and put it all back together in a methodology. And that's just cool stuff. She did a really good job with it. So I was really happy to be able to see Holly from that perspective, which is, not often. So it was good to have. So anyway,
Nice.
I do have to say one thing though about the Interstate Conference. It is looking at large companies. I feel like sometimes I'm very happy for the perspective of life that I have. That I have to be basically the one that points out that the emperor has no clothes. Compared to everybody that's in that room whose paycheck has somebody's name that went on stage on the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And so everybody's got to do the rah-rah. You're like, oh, that's awesome. Did you hear what he said? Look, he looked at me. He must have looked at me. I was waving at him, and you're sitting there back going, y'all are just drinking the Kool-Aid, aren't you? It wasn't like anything bad was being said, but it's like, which one of you is going to stand up and say, I'm sorry, can you clarify that? Because some of the things were being said, you're like, their whole focus of the conference is world domination. I'm like, can you put that into some context?
Yeah. Any metrics here that we can go talk about next year and see?
Yeah, is there a measure scale to this? Is like 10 more hotels dominating, or is 100 more? But no, they're spreading out their operating offices over Amsterdam and so forth. They are really globalizing their efforts compared to being a little myopic on their previous histories to it. I love how verbiage comes out of things like, anybody that's been with a company for a long time, even though the company's under massive transition, is such and such. He's the core of the company's DNA. What does that mean?
The core of the DNA?
Yes. It was
like the one who provided the DNA.
Yeah. Like, were they the source of what you're changing right now? Because if it is, he's probably thinking he doesn't have a long life cycle. If you're flipping everything over and redefining all the stuff, it's like he's kind of the old guard.
Why wouldn't you just say they were a chromosome? I don't understand.
I mean, it's kind of like, Bob over here was back when the company used to be unproductive, but he's the core of the reason why we're changing everything. It's kind of like, wouldn't you worry about your job a little bit if you were the DNA of the company and yet the company is changing to something new? I don't know. I'd be just little word whisker things like that caught me as like, that just seems a little different than I think it was meant to be, but oh well.
And here's Lauren, our new CRISPR technology.
It was fun, though. It was fun. I had all the independent hotels in the room, and it was really neat to be able to dialogue about how to combat and work with brands. Work with brands was the hardest part of the discussion for them to understand, not work against them. And they didn't understand how that could be a symbiotic relationship. And
I'm getting a little bit of echo.
Yeah, me too.
From me? Hold on. Let's see if I.
Yep. It's always you, Lauren.
It is up here.
You're the only one who has multiple streams going.
Yeah, that's true. That might be the case. Is it better or worse?
It's better. It's kind of like a hearing test, right? Or
test.
Yes.
Yeah, works good.
Which ear is it?
Oh, actually, that was one of the big topics at the Hotel Data Conference. Was basically the whole independence versus soft brands. Versus brand, and just that whole dynamic of how that's working out, which I thought was very good. And actually, Ed and I had a conversation earlier in the week, so sorry, Ed, I'll repeat. But Terrence Runson from Hotel News Now did a great job moderating the independent hotel panel. I mean, that was probably the best one. He's a really smart guy from the UK. And they had Graduate hotels. Are you familiar with Graduate, Lauren? Very pure. You aren't.
No.
Very pure hotel concept. They have, I think, 14 properties now, and they have 9 more going. They are building properties in predominantly college towns. Well, exclusively in college towns.
Well, so and it's not really building; they're acquiring too.
Well, yeah, they're acquiring. Yeah, whatever they're doing. They're doing
really cool properties in these really cool college towns.
Yeah. And they're themed,
it's a really neat brand.
But they aren't like badly themed. They're themed to fit in like a hotel should with its local community, right? And since it's a college town, the college is a major focus, and that is the major focus. But they're doing really creative things. A lot of hoteliers, I think, would say, well, this is for parents or for guests or for visiting faculty or whatever the case may be, and kind of ignore the student. Let's keep the students out of here, right? And they have areas in the public spaces where great Wi-Fi. They want students in this hotel. They want them to feel comfortable because they figure when they're alums, they'll come back and want to stay there. And they know.
Imagine that.
Yeah, the students with the parents go, hey, you should stay here. It's really good. The Wi-Fi is great. The food's really good, and all those sorts of things. So they are knocking it out of the park. I mean, they are focused. They know what they are. They know who their market is. They know why they exist, and they are executing on it. And they're learning with what they're doing and improving. I mean, you just can't, yeah. I don't think you can ask for more.
AJ Capital's no joke, though. I mean, if you look at the assets that they've had, they're hoteliers.
Yep.
They're really good.
Yeah, and they have figured it out, and I mean, I don't know how many Division I. Ed would know this. How many Division I schools are there in the U.S.? I guess
130, right? 131.
Yeah, it's a good right? number. So
yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
Well, and then just start thinking what you can do, and not that they would necessarily have to sponsor bowl games, the NCAA Sweet 16, all sorts of they just naturally tie into that whole mechanism of billions of dollars of college sports, which is crazy. So, and the only thing they probably don't get
that are in that type of scenario, and they're always fun to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one thing they're probably leaving out is the visiting team. Big deal, right? You get all the home fans, your home base. And just imagine the food and beverage, for away games and things like that. He didn't go into detail, but I'm sure they have things set up for people to come watch the games, root for them. And,
what out of the conference was the final verdict between what you just talked about with the independent hotels and the soft brands and so forth? What was the consensus of thought, I should say?
STR had some actually one of the greatest benefits of the Hotel Data Conference. Not that I'm doing a promo for them, but you get all the decks, all the presentations at the end, which is.
They're just not promised and they never get delivered like most of the conferences?
Well, they haven't been delivered yet, but they do deliver. They do deliver the decks. They haven't gotten them together.
Man, I feel bad if by the next show they haven't, because Robert turns so quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Those bastards haven't sent the decks. They're not going to do it.
But again, they had, when I presented, I was worried that I wouldn't have folks show up, because they had 4 1-hour breakout sessions that were running, and then 2 30-minute sessions, right? That started backed up by another 30-minute, 2 30-minute sessions. So they're basically 6 simultaneous breakouts. And so there were things where you go, oh, well, I'll go to A or go to B. I had about 70 people in my group, which is fine. I'm happy with with 10% of the folks, especially because I was the second half of one of the smaller breakouts. Which I kind of understood, because I was a little bit more esoteric in the subject matter than some of the other folks. But again, you get all those presentations. They had some really, really interesting stats on independent properties, and I didn't take notes because I knew the presentations are coming, which I haven't gotten yet, which really pisses me off. He's turning already. No, but they were basically looking at the performance of these hotels. The one thing they did not do, which I hope they will, is on conversions. They could do 2 things. And actually, I recommended to the guy, I talked to the STR analyst after the fact. I said, look, you have 2 more studies you really need to do. One is the performance of new builds of an independent, right, or a soft brand, right, because they know where these guys are, how they compared to something in its class, its in scale for a major brand. They should be tracking that and going, hey, look at this, as well as conversions. Here's what you were doing as an independent, and now here's how your performance was as a soft brand, or here's how you did as a conversion. I think those would be fascinating studies. So we will. We'll see how that happens. If they never come out, I don't know if that will be STR going, ooh, we don't want to piss off the major hotel groups. But I don't know. I really think in many cases, a lot of folks were saying there is definitely good room for independent hotels. If you do it right, you run it well, you can do a great job. But a key issue now is if you become part of these soft brands or the chains, you can lower your distribution costs because you get better deals from the OTAs, right? Because there's now a material difference between what Marriott and Hilton, those guys have beaten the OTAs down to versus what the pure independents are. So that's, and it shouldn't really be like that, right? It shouldn't be that being the differentiator, just a pure distribution cost from an intermediary dictating whether you should affiliate with a brand or not. You would think there would be more to the brand than just the distribution cost, but
single channel strategy, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Why go omni-channel when you can go single channel?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, a lot of these guys, they go out, depending on the soft brand, they may or may not be able to have their own website, right? I mean, that's getting cranked down a little bit. I'm
going to say that I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that the brands have done.
Absolutely. That is the stupidest
because I gotta be honest with you,
on the planet.
Not a single of the big brands do a good job at selling the unique proposition of the hotel and its location.
Absolutely.
And especially when you're in a situation where there are 30 competing brands under that same brand umbrella in the same exact market. I'm sorry. It's foolish. And I think it's something you'll see change over time.
I don't know. I think a lot of these brands, they understand the threat of the OTAs and the other channels, and if they can eliminate all the other channels strategically, and it only goes through their website, then they get credit for those bookings, right?
They get credit for them when there was a vanity site as well. I mean, because the vanity site still went to the booking engine. I think eliminating vanity sites was a big mistake.
I completely agree, but I think the reason they do it is they want total control of all the data, all the distribution, all God knows everything, right? And then nobody can say, "Oh, we should pay you less because we were driving this traffic and this conversion versus your traffic and your conversion," which is how the third-party management companies started, quite frankly, right? Because before it was a bet. I mean, we're talking a long, long time ago, well before your times, folks. When those
also
guys
before
popped
the
up,
internet.
way before the internet. After the Smith Corona typewriter, though, and the IBM Selectric, around the time of the IBM Selectric, I believe, was these third-party managers. It was like, oh no, you don't do that. You are sticking with us. We run we own it. We manage. That's it. Or if you're a franchise, we're going to manage it. And the third-party management companies were doing a better job of managing them than the brands. I mean, that's how MHM, Bob Gilbert's start with MHM, with Motor Hotel Management. They did a much, much better job than any of the major brands. So, but I think it's the same thing. They want total control over everything because then they see all the data. And in fairness to the brands, they can probably do a better job by starting to figure out, hey, what's going on with these things. But from a pure SEO perspective, it is absolutely foolish.
It's absolutely foolish from an SEO perspective. I think it's foolish to use the control as the complaint on it, because here's the thing. They can accomplish allowing hotels to have flexibility in how they market their property, or even how they position describing their property, things like that. You can't. I have so many angles on this. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time bringing all of them out.
Without cursing.
I think fundamentally my problem with this move is the brands do not actually do a good job of giving the property the ability to have any control on what's good about the property, the location, or anything. They homogenize marketing or displaying what a hotel is on their websites. So that is why you need to give the hotels the ability to do a better job of explaining to consumers who want to understand more than the checklist approach. The having access to the data, to having control over all of that. I mean, all of that's addressable. But taking it away, I just think it's foolish. You strip all personality, you strip all all trust from a hotel, and this is how Airbnb wins. By the way, I'm just saying because
and Graduate and all these guys, they have unique properties, and that is certainly what everybody was screaming at this conference, that consumers want unique experiences flat out. They don't want just the same hotel they could get somewhere else, which is, again, going way back, and is the complete inverse of the birth of Holiday Inns, the birth of Marriott, things like that. Right. I mean, Marriott used to get premium ADRs in Europe because it was all the Americans going over there going, oh, this is great. Why would I stay at the Crillon or the Ritz? I don't know what that is. I'll stay at the Marriott.
But that's where you though, I mean, that existed because access to data and access to knowledge limited. Was so limited back then. Right. Mm-hmm. You can learn anything you want to learn about anything today within moments. And so trying to hold on to a reasoning that is no longer necessary in the eyes of the consumer is foolish. I really think, and that's why I like brands like Graduate. They're the opposite brand, right? And I think the same thing about Omni. I think Omni does a really good job. I think Four Seasons does a really good job. So I'm not saying all brands, but I'm saying homogenizing. If you're large scale and you're not leaving room for your hotels to really explain to the consumer what's special about them.
To chime into this a little bit, because to give some relevancy in current time for me, when I had the room full of independent hotels, the first thing I had to kind of dispel out of the room was the inferiority feeling that they had in competition to branding, and to redefine that as a superiority over branding. And then to use the relationship with branding in a way that is functional for them. There was several hotels that had just recently deflagged and were on the Independence Road. And the problem is there's multiplicity.
So hang on, what chain scale were they in, or market? What kind of markets?
Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt. All three hotels that were in the room had been previously those within the past 6 months.
Those are big box.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were they in major like New York, Miami, San Francisco type things, or were they
and Caribbean? Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And they just stepped out from those. Like I said, multiplicity of problems. One, don't step away from the motherland if you don't have replacements to the parts that work.
and that is probably the most difficult.
But that's also where brands have immense value.
Of course,
exactly.
Complaining about their bad decision, as far as I'm concerned, on allowing interesting hotels to continue to be marketed.
Interesting.
but the problem with them is
the infrastructure value, the training value. Like, there's a lot of other value that a brand does bring, which is why I think this hyper focus on this channel is ridiculous. Like, they're playing a game that they're going to, eventually realize was the wrong game to play. The war against the OTAs for brands it's the wrong game to play. They could have played their cards completely in a different way, and still ended up with what they needed to end up with financially. Again, I love playing Monday morning quarterback. I get there's complexity, difficulties, all of that stuff. But I just think, I don't know. I think the Graduates of the world, the Omnis of the world, the Four Seasons of the world, they're going to continue thriving. I think you're going to see disruption in like the big box brand if they continue down these paths.
Well, let's say about it, and I definitely agree with everything you just said. Yes, but two things to this. I think the biggest value that brand brings to everybody is the scapegoat value. That is, there's somebody to blame.
You ever get fired for buying IBM?
Yeah. Well, no. Right. Hey, let me tell you, all these guys, all the debt financing guys, are certainly still doing that. They look at that. Yeah. A brand reduces the risk. You can get a better number on your note, and
Ed, you do know that I put your statement into about every pitch I make now. Imagine the world where it wasn't necessary to be a brand to start a hotel to get financing. And wonder if OTAs took it on instead of just them. And you get a lot of people in the room that are at that scale of understanding that they're going, whoa, yeah, whoa. You know, all of a sudden lights start flickering. It's like, yeah, where I don't have to go over and pay homage to how many brand hotels I have before I finally can go over and open my own independent. But let me just say a couple things. One of the scapegoat thing. When you're dealing with corporate entities, ownership entities and so forth, it's not about winning the circumstance. Sometimes it is being able to blame yourself out of it. You know, like it's not me, it's something else. And brands fulfill that role for every component of the entire dialogue chain about a hotel's success or failure. From an investment point of view, operations point of view, marketing point of view, sales point of view, every point of view is the fact that brand can be pointed at and saying, well, we brought them in to do that. That was their role. This was this. And when you extract that out of the conversation, like these hotels have had, they find themselves at the bottom of a very tall mountain. They didn't know how tall it was until the clouds cleared. And now they realize all the things that brand represented to them beyond the intrinsic, how much they wrote as a big check every month for their brand relationship. And when that comes and hits them in reality, all of a sudden they're trying to scramble for best in market, and they don't know what best in market is. And then, fortunately, some people survive this process, and they realize the view from the top of the mountain is pretty freaking cool. You know, where when you don't have that relationship, how much you can do and what you can get done to do it with, because now they see all the pieces that take to it. Those are the people I love talking to, because those are the people that aren't asking not silly questions, but pretty vanilla questions, first layer questions. When they start really talking about not just who's good at what, but rather, how does this exactly get done? Then when they understand how it gets done, then they're going to ask who's doing it that way. You know, those are the people you love to dialogue. Well, like I said, I love what I do because I walk into these rooms not worrying about who I have to worry about, but rather who is it that's doing what right, because I want to go talk to them too, you know?
Right.
And it's
you want to learn from them.
Yeah, you want to hear from them. You know, it's not just standing on a stage and talking. It's talking to the people and hearing back some of the stuff. And there's some brilliance at property level. I mean, brilliance. There are some amazing people. There was, you know, and the reason why we have brands is because we like to categorize stuff. Well, we also do that stereotype people. You know, when you walk into a room, and I had a room full of salespeople, and I'm looking for the people that are going to do this in the back of the room while I talk, or this on the phone when I talk. You know, you're trying to start categorize which one of these people do I have to pay an eye on to keep them engaged. And I was truly, genuinely surprised. The people that I thought were the legacy salespeople, you know, this is new for me, you know, new stuff that I don't want to bother with. I do it my way and my only way, and I'm here because I was told to be here kind of people. That's who I thought they were. No, those were the all in, man. They were the all in people.
No, I mean, you met Verdell, right?
Yeah.
If you used your judgment without knowing,
I thought he wouldn't have been giving me the time of day.
But he's one of the most forward-thinking.
Oh my gosh,
really innovative sales leaders.
He was smiling ear to ear as I'm talking. He was nodding his head. He was making sure that he was right. I mean, and it wasn't. I mean, for me, it was flattery that when anybody writes something while I'm talking, because that means I've said something they want to remember. But the fact that people out there exist and at property level. That's the fun of this, is like our industry is alive and well if you let the people that understand it rise to the top, rather than allowing the process of P&Ls and RETs and ownerships that aren't in the industry, you know, dictate policies and so forth. Because like brand, to me, you brought up IBM. IBM used to be, as you said, blue chip. Buy it, you're safe. IBM, brands are going to go the way of, they need to go the way of IBM by association. No longer is it just one person builds everything. One person just builds a part of something better. And hotel brands have to do that. Instead of trying to dominate and control, they need to be, you know, I'm a Marriott, and people recognize that as an affiliation, not as a responsibility.
Right. Yeah. And understand the value proposition it brings, which is not just the demand that it brings. Right. It's, you know, it's so much more than that. This hyper focus on statistical driving of, you know, customers really lessens the true overall value proposition that a brand brings. And also,
if it's a well-defined brand, and that's where these guys are starting to run into problems, right? If it's a clearly defined,
if you already have 30 in a market, you got to figure out some way to be able to sell 4 more, because Wall Street won't be happy unless there's key growth.
That's right. No, and that's a problem. And actually, again, with the Hotel Data Conference, being able to talk to guys like, Robert Mandelbaum at CBRE, really smart guy. Jan Freitag at STR. I mean, these guys really have their fingers kind of on the pulse of what's going on in the industry. And talking to him about, okay, so what happens in the next downturn? Because everybody's like, it's going to happen, right? We've been plateaued since the end of 2016. I mean, yes, we're getting these 3%, bumps in RevPAR, but it's not, demand next year is forecast to be flat, sort of thing. That's not a great, not a great situation. And supply is, growing, but not growing as fast as people thought it might be, right? So that's kind of saving the industry right now. But you guys go, so what happens when you have these, large hotel groups that are sitting there in a downturn, unable to feed their X numbers of brands, be it 15 or 30 or whatever that number is? That's not going to be a pretty sight. And they've been beating everything up to book direct and do this and with these guys, basically the assessment that I heard that really came out loud and clear was the member rate discount, right, is clearly paid for by the owners to benefit the brand. And almost everybody I talked to basically said, yeah, short term, that didn't work. It really, started impacting profit. But in the long run, it should be better. And it's like, how exactly does that? We are at peak occupancies, peak demands, record ADRs, record occupancies, record RevPARs. How does it get better when that goes down? I don't know. Last all I remember was 2009, 2010, and again, Robert Mandelbaum from CBRE had one of the greatest lines in a thing. He said, "This was the worst year for the hotel industry since the Great Depression, because CBRE used to be PKF, who had stats going back to 1936." So. But that's a pretty bold statement when you go, this is the worst year. I think it was 2010, worst year on record for the hotel industry, was a record year for OTAs, right? The intermediaries won in the downturn.
That is how Priceline became massive. That's when Booking.com really got a strong rip.
Well, Priceline was in the middle of 2001, almost went bankrupt. Their share price was down to nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's horrible to say, but 9/11 basically changed the fortunes of that company, because the demand collapsed. People, and all of a sudden the name your own price thing, which was their only business at that point in time, really, that all got pushed in. And again, they did a lot of other things. I mean, Jeff Boyd came in, they got rid of Jay Walker, who was the founder, who was really going to make name your own price be how you brought groceries and gasoline and mortgages and everything else, which didn't quite work out. So they cut down that, and they pivoted price. Cool. Oh yeah. A little confusing for people, but yeah. So,
I'd like to name my own price on orange juice.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like only paying $1 today.
Well, and name your own price on gas. Name your own price on gasoline, right? That you just look at that, and I have, I've got a couple friends in the oil industry who have wells out in West Texas. Just pump around. They go, yeah, the price of West Texas crude goes down. Instead of pumping whatever 40,000 a month, 80,000 a month, or whatever. Yeah, it does a little bit less, but it keeps producing the same amount. He goes, why should I give anybody a discount? It's a commodity. Right. I mean, that's just me making less money and someone else just filling the gap at the higher. It makes no sense. I'm producing this much. And you look at it from a hotel perspective, you built this many rooms, kind of, should you, what should you be doing with that? So anyway.
Hey, I had a question that came up with me, and I gave some answers to it, but I would love to have what you guys would have as an answer towards it. How do you
I'd like to know the right answers. Well, let's ask him.
How do you think you would modify your strategy for dynamic inventory that Airbnb represents? How do you flex your strategy ideas when you're dealing with the elasticity of demand and the ability for dynamic inventory to be priced into market during your demand cycles? How does that affect rate strategy for you, or how can you combat it with rate strategy, or what would you combat it with?
Well, I think number one is in terms of the budgeting process. You need to be very careful of having your sellout days, where you go, oh, hey, there's a citywide and we've got such and such and all these things happening. We're going to crank the price. I mean, you're going to have to pull that back, because that is not happening in the major markets. That supply starts kicking in. And again, it depends on your particular locale and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that. There are modifiers to that question.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, I think you need air DNA data and things like that coming into your models and your pricing models to start figuring out, and your budgeting models to start figuring out, here's what's happening.
Really honest here. Then, besides a few markets, I can answer your question far easier. Pay attention to what's going on and dynamically work your rates based on your demand needs versus what's happening in your market. Like, let's not talk like every market is New York City, Las Vegas, or certain weeks of the year in Central Florida. Like, it's not this complicated, and the majority of hotels are not in markets that need to re-optimize pricing 3 times a day for the next 90-day window. Like, those are the fun things to talk about in really advanced methodologies. But in reality, most hotels are not in a market that's that aggressive. So be aware of the demands in your market and get everyone on your team, who should include marketing, should include ops, should include the whole team, to start working proactively towards need times. There are things you can do to optimize your revenue strategy and have your marketing strategy deployed correctly. It's not as advanced as these other markets, right?
Well, yeah, my point though is on the budgeting is, I think, where the hotels got themselves into trouble, because they have some sort of spike in terms of ADR requirement, right? Which then, when it doesn't start materializing, they and then they slash the rates, because again, their rates were too high. They haven't built in even their base occupancy, and then they go and fire sale it to move in, and it's just you start getting not necessarily a death spiral, but it just really kills your bottom line. So I think you've got to be pragmatic for that.
But if you're always looking ahead, you can avoid a lot of that. You can be messing with it. You shouldn't wait to the last minute to realize that your starting rate for a future period started too high. You should incrementally be finding the threshold that releases demand.
And making sure you have a good, solid base of reliable business, and you don't go and just torch the the corporate headquarters next door because they want a lower price, and then you expect to get them back when things turn down. It's basically build a nice base, and yes, having that base may take a little bit off of your optimal ADR potential, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Absolutely.
If slow and steady and consistent through a year will make you far more money than trying to maximize tiny high demand periods. You'll make more money if you're consistently optimized.
Right. Well, and if you have that base of business in, your revenue or your occupancy is going to be higher, and you should start, and again, I'm not saying just go build a base and get all this cheap business. I mean, and again, this is way back, 1984. The Republican National Convention in Dallas, right, was coming in, and we had a brand new, relatively new, Four Seasons hotel. And you kind of go, okay, well, they want 200 rooms. They wanted half of our inventory, right? And we were out a little ways from the convention center when all this stuff was going on. And we looked at it when, no. And we lied to we lied to the Republican National Committee, and we would have lied to the Democratic National Committee just as easily, because we knew there was going to be
back then, weren't they the opposite of what they are today anyways?
They were somewhat, yeah. But no, I think a little bit. They had to go back to the '60s for him to really flop.
Oh, okay.
Flip flop. But really, in that scenario, we knew the city was going to be high demand. We knew giving them whatever this low rate, just
and
to
you
be
knew
part of whatever.
You want the Republicans. You wanted all the people coming in town.
Hey, in Texas, in Irving,
stay.
Texas, you wanted the Republicans.
No, you wanted the people who were coming in town to bribe the Republicans to stay in your hotel.
Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. In talking to the owners of the hotel about this strategy, right? The owners of the hotel were the guy who was the founder of Southland Financial, a very large real estate group, which owned one of three groups that owned all the land between DFW Airport and downtown Dallas. You had the Carpenters, who were Southland Financial. You had the Stemmons, who have a freeway named after them. And you have Trammell Crow, who had the Market Center, except for 200 yards, which were owned by a railroad. The Burlington Northern Railroad. These three individual families owned all that land, right? So we had the Carpenters, and John Carpenter, the son, his wife was Seal Briscoe, who happened to be the daughter of the former governor of Texas. So these guys, if you walked into their little powder room, downstairs in their house, it was kind of interesting. Next to the toilet, there was a little framed invitation type thing. You looked at it and, oh, it was an invitation to the Carters, to Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter's something or other that they hung next to their toilet down in the powder. So we're talking strong Republican families. But we talked to them and just said, hey guys, we think it works out better if we just say no. And we gave them 40 rooms or something like that. Basically a fifth of what they wanted. And yes, we sold out, had the highest ADR in town because we knocked it out. Everybody else, we've got to go do this. And there are smart ways to play it and
right.
Dumb ways, right? So, but that's the thing. You need to know those peaks. But with Airbnb kicking in again, and not in all markets, if there is variable demand, and let me tell you, there's more of this stuff coming. Groups that are building apartment buildings that don't have all the apartments rented are now putting their inventory out for supply. You're getting purpose-built.
I think that's brilliant.
It is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, every
Flexible
unsold
assets.
vacation room. Right. And hotels should be very, very worried because these guys can add supply or take it off, or look at New York and go, in this situation, it's got to be a minimum 30-day rental. Okay, that's fine.
There is mechanics to each of the markets, as you said, and there's different things. I try to look at it, and I've always tried to look at this pragmatically. Is like, first off, if you're competing with somebody, what is it that they can't do? What's their limitations? Do you suffer from that same limitation? If you don't, then it's an exploitable asset on your side that you don't have to suffer from the same thing. Airbnb is not a short-term thing. It's not a short-term pickup. It can be, depending on certain circumstances. Again, to market, there's always variations. But in general, it's a long-term decision. You're making this choice weeks out, days out, not same day, not 7 days out, right. Usually weeks out, because you have to create the relationship with the host, blah, 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 so forth. So that means their weakness is optimum book window that most hotels have. So if you go in heavy and hot with your high rates early in and try to maintain them, you're going to give business to Airbnb on their dynamic inventory because people are going to then venture into other opportunities for them to pick up inventory where Airbnb might be a lower rated piece of business.
Well, and Airbnb's business model is if you book, it may be refundable, but not the fee, right? So there's a $35, $50
commitment to it.
Airbnb gets paid no matter what, which again is a brilliant business model for them, better than Booking.com, right?
Right.
But again, what happened, I think the big problem is you got a lot of people, and I do it, guilty. Sorry, hoteliers. I'm looking at, certain places I have to be over certain dates. I will book something way out in advance on Booking.com, which is good enough, and it's dirt cheap. And I just go, you know what? That's there, and then I'll just see what happens toward the end.
You revenue manage your trip.
I do, absolutely, and I win because all I need
to have your base.
Right.
Exactly.
But again, and I do the same thing. I have multiple reservations for so on. I mean, it's the New York model, I call it, because in New York, people flood 6 or 7 reservations, and then they'll end up cherry picking the one they're going to keep. Massive cancellations by percentage in the market. But what I'm trying to say is this: historically, revenue managers go over and this is a traditional process that's happening right now in hotels in their budget season. They're looking next year, and they're blacking out peak repeat business dates because they want to lock and load and hold, and they're going to max those out. And right now, to your point, Robert, there are people knowing they're going to be traveling during those times because they're going to go to the Lollapalooza Festival, and they're looking what's out there right now. And Airbnb people, hosts who maybe aren't super hosts, but are occasional hosts, they're going to peak out at markets, the opportunity markets like that. They're going to leave the market for the Lollapalooza, and they're right now selling their inventory. So I try to tell people from a strategic point of view, don't just black out or peak out your rates at rack or above rack or whatever tagged on the back of your door, but rather put some bait in the water. See what people are really interested in and rely on your marketing to say, guys, this is the time of year now that our inventory is opened up for the Lollapalooza Festival. You might be thinking it'd be great to book and lock it in and be now. And because you're going to do it now, we're going to give you a really good rate that we are not going to have available as we get closer, if even we have anything available as it gets closer.
Well, and then I think you offer that really attractive rate, non-refundable.
Yes. Oh, you have to. Yeah,
absolutely.
Prepay
and save is a
powerful
thing.
Right? That's
we're reducing your risk. Yeah, we're going to reduce your risk on these things getting out of control, and just come and pony up the money.
But that's what you see marketing.
And if you're an OTA, what do? They sell you travel insurance as well. A lot of hotel companies doing that. No, not so much.
But you see, the revenue managers never had that as an option for themselves. They only have two levers: rate availability. Okay,
right.
So for them, the only thing they can do is put a fence around and say you can't get to it until we're ready to harvest. So they can only block. If they go back to the marketers and say, look, give me the business for my peak yieldable times early enough that I can get base interest and then build from it, you diffuse the dynamic inventory into that space because you're hitting them at the sweet spot that's a viable option for people. And then you're compressing it down to the point that then you can yield maximum rate during peak booking window for it, where Airbnb is no longer a factor because it just doesn't fit to scale.
Right.
And so if you dissect it down like that, it's not, I'm not saying it's not hard, but it's certainly attainable. It's certainly a way of getting and attacking it at that point.
Listen, and you need to be looking at your moves on this as if you're balancing on one leg, holding a stick. Movements like these are going to cause you to fail. Slight corrections. Slight corrections.
Well, and all of a sudden that reinforces your retail pricing structure.
Right.
It starts providing specific value propositions of what is your brand, offering at what price, so people can start going, that's good value. Hey, they're reliable. I kind of understand
Stay out of the Groupon effect.
Yeah, or you wind up being more like the airlines, right? Where it is just the pricing is flat out insane. I'm going up. Lauren, are you going to HSMAI? Oh, or wait, are you aren't on a?
Yeah, I'll be in Baltimore next week after next.
Oh no, not the Curate thing. The retreat.
No, I'm not.
So for the market, you aren't on any boards. Oh, that's
I'm not on any boards this year. No, I am boardless.
Well, they're doing
the world of HSMAI.
September 11th and 12th. They're having the marketing board retreat, right? And it's in Chicago instead of Dallas. So I'm like, damn. but again, what did they do? And this was a silly move by HSMA. Sorry, Julie and Bob, but this was pretty stupid. They're out there. They picked the dates. Well, they asked people where they wanted to go, and people are tired of going to Dallas, which is completely understandable because I'm here every day.
Anyway,
what?
I'm tired of going to Dallas.
Anyway, they picked that. Well, the rate out at the Hilton at O'Hare, which isn't even downtown, $275 a night. Right? That's the group rate. And you look at it and go, really? That's just not, that's not good. Now, again, I got something off of, I believe, booking.com, which is an 80% rating. It's a, $8 Uber ride to and from the hotel, $56 a night. And you just go, really? But this is it's a little mom and pop place, which probably should be charging a lot more, but I don't care. It's a one day in and out. And the flights are under $100. I think it's $94 round trip. So you go, wait, you can actually go to Chicago and get everything all in for a day, and be under, $175 or that's insane.
You know what I told one of my clients was when you're deciding group rate, look at the radiant of 30 minutes from anywhere around you. Find the lowest rate, and how is your group block going to be compared to that? Because here's the thing: if your group percentage contribution to your business is less than 25%, which most people think is usually more, but it ends up being around the 25% mark, it's a contribution percentage of your business. You can afford to maybe eat some rate to keep the block filled, to expose your product to people who wouldn't stay there. Because, again, to point out to Julie and Bob and apologize for this, there's no way I'm staying at the hotel that this Curate thing's at, because I'm literally a quarter of a mile away that I'm going to walk because I'm all day at the other hotel. And it is a third of the rate that is the group block rate at the hotel that the event's at. And for them to send
and it's a value,
huh?
And it's a value proposition. I mean, if you were in Minneapolis in January or something, in a suburban place where you couldn't get there through a tunnel, maybe that would be okay. I don't, you know, and you stay at the headquarters property and you go, this is fine. But it really comes down to who's spending the money. In many cases, it's the company's, it's the company's dime, right? And people don't care, right? It's just like,
I like the Google model. I like Google's travel model. You're going to get a per diem, but anything you don't spend in that per diem goes into your pocket.
Yeah,
and I spoke real quickly. There's a lot of other hotels that are within pretty convenient proximity to whatever Google's sending you to, and then you get to go over and cash it in on what you want to do and stay someplace else when it's a good place to go to.
So gentlemen, before we get into anything else, I'm going to head off. I actually have a call coming up, thanks to our friend Tim Peter for introducing me to a hotelier. So I have to go get ready for that.
Clients in the way again? What? What's the first?
Tim is so busy. Tim is so busy that he's now getting it to where I can't come on the show.
Wow, Tim, you're rocking it, man.
Ed, I don't understand. You were saying earlier this week you have too many of these clients. They're all just a pain. You're really trying to
pay you too much money anyway. You know, it's taking money.
Really don't think that's right.
It's because I still haven't figured out how to just get money without getting to have employees or clients. So, until I can figure it out.
Until that tree grows big enough that the dollars start peeling off.
That's because you haven't looked at the blockchain serious enough yet.
Oh, excellent, Mr. Robert. Excellent.
Now those days may have been gone, but there was a window. There was a window there. There was a window there.
You know what it is? I think deep down, Ed is trying to poo-poo blockchain because he has a farm. He has a server farm at home. That's where all of his bandwidth and computers, he probably has racks and racks and racks, and he's mining. And that's what it is. He's trying to keep us off the scent while he's cashing in on the big blockchain retirement.
Little known fact, when Disney closes down Space Mountain or the mine train, it's not because of a mechanical issue. They don't have enough electricity. Ed is sucking out all the power out of the Orlando grid.
It's true.
Yeah, power the server racks. Wow.
So, all right, gents. Have a great weekend. You can find me at Flip2 on the social media as Edward St. Ange. Be prepared. Stay off my Twitter. College football season starting. So,
unless you really like UCF, if you love
UCF, you're gonna love your Twitter.
You're gonna love that Twitter feed.
Right. That's right.
Mr. Ed.
Jen. Thanks a lot. Have a great
day. Bye. Bye. Mr. Robert, you gave us some great topics, and we haven't really addressed any ones in particular. We've talked
as normal. Well, no, actually, one that was, I think, that we were kind of talking about a little bit was why hotels envy airlines when it comes to managing revenue. Yep. And I think Sean at Skift did a very nice job putting that together because they really basically he runs through a whole pile of different scenarios, which actually start off with just having really crappy underlying legacy technology, which means you can't get to the core essence of the business of understanding what's going on. Because what we were talking about, earlier, I was going to, chime in that you need to start looking at all of your segments, and I would really argue personas of these different guests, and trying to track their booking curves, how much they're picking up, what channels they're coming through, every single aspect of those, and treating each of those as individual funnels to really figure out what is going on with your business. Because if you're, again, a property that's in a suburban area that has some good group meeting space, and you've got corporate business, and hey, maybe you have recreation and a deal with a golf club, where you can get, tee times at the, local golf club, and maybe it's a really good golf, maybe it's a TPC golf course or something people want to play. That's fantastic. You can go out and start dealing with, or the local college football teams of people who come in, and every major area has one. And if it's not maybe you don't have proximity to the stadium, maybe you don't have certain things, but you can start doing things of offering shuttles and all sorts of interesting deals that go, what is driving demand? How can I tap into that with something creatively, and then tracking the stats to figure out what are the pricing, what pricing is required to make this a good value for people that also works for you, and what's the booking curve off of that. And that is a lot of different levers, but I think to optimize your hotel, you've got to be at that level of detail of looking at each of those is a different revenue stream that you've got to layer into to achieve the whole.
You bring up an advanced conversation to a pretty much premise, again, to give accolades to Holly's insights as to what the industry needs and why she structured her training so effectively. She makes one of the largest companies spend $500,000 to bring all their sales team together to train with her. Is a portion of what
but she's doing it wrong. She's supposed to get the $500,000.
Right. Now,
right.
That part maybe she can be better at, but yeah, the reason why they got together is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
Put into the persona development. It is such a critical component of both marketing strategy, revenue management strategy, and also sales strategy. I mean, in the context
Absolutely.
of what I had in present is, but the add to what you just said. First off, the creation of personas, and then their business cycle. Most people are just beginning to grasp that thought. The second is to be
and that's just that pains me so.
Because they don't even listen. I spent an hour constructing how to create personas. And I'll tell you the obstacles that first came out of this with this. And like I said, Holly did a great job of breaking down the training portion of this, but this is the barrier walls we had to break through. So we asked them to create personas. One is a homework piece before they came to the conference. Second is an exercise in the conference.
Oh, let me see. Persona, group, package, transient.
No. I would even like to say that it was. They didn't even do segmentation. Oh. They took their premier clients and literally named their persona the premier clients, and that's who they created as a persona. And I said, so I'm telling them, it's like, okay, why did you pick that? Well, that's our main client. I said, so can you duplicate it? Because the idea of creating a persona is to be able to identify the market type so that you can amplify its value.
Right.
And I said, so if to these credit, these people, I don't mind pointing out to them that they refer to GE. Because we began to reconstruct. It was a good start point, but then light bulbs started going off as to the purpose of what was going on. GE, and this is what we want. Well, can you duplicate this persona GE? Is there another GE in your market? Well, no, it's GE.
Right.
So we're not here to identify your best client. We're here to identify what makes your best client.
Right.
So
they have a major office building. Yeah, they have a major office building within 3/4 of a mile of the hotel, or 2 miles, or whatever that radius.
Right. So that was the first barrier. But then they began to understand that it isn't just about creating the persona that they understood. I said, you all understand that this stuff is already in your head. When you walk into a room as a salesperson, and it's a fertile room of potential clients, you already know how to isolate out whom you want to talk to based on their categorization of business, their position in that business. All these things are in your salesman's head or salesperson's head. Yeah. But this needs to be put on paper. And I said, why? And they're like, well, if we know, then why? Because when you put it on paper, now you can begin to communicate with other departments. And that's the key element. Now you can go to your marketer and say, these kind of people, this industry type and this type of whatever it is, so forth and so on, this is what I want you to go fetch. I'm your go fetch person. Marketing is go fetch. Go get me more of these. Okay? Yep. And then when you go to your front desk, your front of the house, and your operations people, this is the pain points of my persona. They need this. Their billing has to be this. The people that they're bringing in, these are their requirements. Right. Now it's a communication tool to your front desk and to your accounting team and so forth. And then when you go to your revenue management people, it's like these people represent this type of business for you. So if I can get more of them, this is what I can contribute to our revenue horizon. And it turns into a communication tool. then the light bulbs start going off. It's like, oh yeah,
oh,
my God,
return guests and lifetime customer value and all of that stuff starts layering in. Well, and it avoids the problem of one of those segments should be, you know, like disinterested third parties is what I call them, right? They've got to be there. They could care less about your hotel, right?
Right.
They just,
we had three types of. We categorized business. This is kind of in the middle of a conversation of other things about it, but we categorized, that business from a source of, you have your discoverers, your dreamers, people that are coming in that are wanting to understand what it is that you have to offer. Then you have your utilitarians, which are like, look, they've acid bathed it down to exactly keep this in the box and just give me the paper to sign. And then you have your distressed ones, which are, I never can let this happen again because it was such a cluster, whatever it is. These are my pain points. That's the distress user. Yeah. But what we were trying to talk to them is then they began to understand the rationale that once you create these personas and you start training segmentation with them, okay, then you can go over and move into what is it that created them to be that type of person? Why the utilitarian is down to that box? Why is the distressed person there? Because of what reasons? What generated them to this point that you cross-sected them? And again, light bulbs going off is like, yeah, because if I did that, then I could dissect how I can get somebody farther up in the stream that I can begin to address their issues before they even know it. And I can be a resource to them because we're talking about influencer training, about becoming an influencer, and that this, the trusted authority, quality asset person, and so forth. And that's where all this training was coming from. And so I think there was, and again, credit to everybody that was in the room with me, because you know how I can go in tangents to rabbit holes. They went over and really began to understand the core of why these things are important, not just that it's in a book or on a slide deck and some graphics there, but what it really means to their daily existence as a salesperson.
Well, and I think you're nailing it absolutely on the whole end-to-end approach that you have to deal with it on. Because again, one of those segments is going to be an OTA guest who's brand agnostic. They're just there. You don't even have all their information, and they're just. And what happens from a revenue management perspective? You put them in the crappiest possible room because they're at the lowest rate, right? Now, again, if you can figure out anything about them, and again, that may be, if you work more effectively with the OTA, you may be able to get some information back and forth and be able to market more effectively to these guys. But you can wind up going, oh, well, if I don't abuse these people, they will like me and they will maybe want to come back. But if you give them the crappiest room, you just do a whole bunch of really your room isn't going to be ready until 6 o'clock at night because you're a cheap, whatever. And you start disrespecting a segment of your guests. Why would you ever expect them to, it should be every hotelier goes, well, yeah, I'll take the OTAs for new business, people who've just discovered me, and then I'm going to convert them to be a regular guest. Like, well, you start working through that persona, and all of a sudden you start looking through your operational processes, and you're going to have some decisions to make. And it's the same thing. Some of the hotels who go, hey, these are our best corporate clients. We do not want to upgrade them. If we've got a bunch of empty suites or junior suites or things like, we are not going to give them that because that is a discount. And they're going to start getting used to it and they're going to hate it and things. It's like, or you're going to just let that sit empty, or you don't let the corporate guys in there, but you bump up whatever. I've been in a situation where it's been, last fill sort of rooms in the hotel, and I'm getting bumped up to suites, and I'm just I booked through Hotwire or something like that. Like, I should not be in this room. Why am I here? I'm not complaining, but someone is doing something dramatic. Not that I should be in the worst room either, but hey. Again,
it goes back to a point, and I mean this from self-ego or whatever. If I owned a hotel, there are owners that expect that when they walk in the door, they're being put into the suite. They have the gratuitous room amenities that flood the room, and it's expectation. And then there is the wonderful surprises, like when I went out to Las Vegas Rock and was at the Encore. And to me, I looked like I was hired help in the sense, in my mind, mentally, I was hired help. I was a speaker to the engagement. I'm there because I'm a function of the process, and the hotel and the director of sales, the vice president, she did wonderful. She said this amazing chocolate amenity that
Chris Flatt is amazing. I am a massive Chris Flatt fan. As most people I have ever met who have met her.
She said this. You look at the room service prices. It's $20 for a glass of wine. I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's Las Vegas. You go and you're staying in this beautiful premier hotel. Things aren't cheap because you're staying at the premier. Things are priced because you're staying in a premier hotel.
And Steve Wynn was the guy who figured out that, oh, you don't have to have the $1.99 steak and lobster buffet and free room service and whatever people will pay for this if you provide them really good.
Right, to have the experience. So this amenity, I'm sure on any amenity guide, if I want to buy it for a friend, was probably very expensive. And to have it given gratuitously is just a, hey, I'm glad you're here thing. Wow. Because here I am talking about it, right? And you deal with group people, there's a mental expectation. I'm a part of a group block. I'm a part of.
You were probably flagged. My understanding a little bit about Wynn after working with him pretty closely for about 3 years, you were probably flagged as a speaker at a conference. And I'm pretty sure that's why you were pigeonholed as that, and just like, this is what we do for speakers at conference. Right. Because they have figured out the meeting planners want happy speakers who are really satisfied. So yeah, the group, and I'm in front of people.
Yeah, right. I can be in front of people. I can be in front of people, and if I'm having a bad experience, I might use them as a reference point because hey, I got in here and my. If anything, that was the movie Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, or whatever it was when they did the painful thing to the inspector. They picked the wrong inspector and they were pandering to one that was the dummy, and the one that was the real inspector. They just terrorized his room, so they made a bad score. Everybody that walks in the door is that person. It's funny because you point to it as a movie piece, but I mean, you can have somebody that's a part of a group that is very influential, both socially or business acumen. And just because they're part of a group, they get put into, as you said, the backwater rooms, hey, it's a group block, it was lower rate, but whatever. But that will ripple into their mental memory of your product. And maybe they're planning next time and they're not going to pick yours.
Why should you treat any guest as a subpar whatever?
Exactly the point.
You need to treat them all with respect. And it's because, especially if you don't know who they are. Right. And the excuse of, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were is not.
Make a difference. It shouldn't make a difference. Exactly.
So you only treat. Don't.
Who was it that famously said they used to gauge and they would bring their potential interviewees out to the restaurants, and depending on how they treated the server was an indication as to how they were as a manager. I forget who. That was kind of a famous person.
The one I always used was John Sharp, who was the president of Four Seasons, who no relation to Izzy Sharp, the founder. He was a former Sheraton GM. He would go out interviewing GMs and go across the lobby, knowing that he would be, he would position himself, actually take the time to position himself to come in from the meeting room that they were going to go talk in, right? And on his way out, he would drop a little piece of paper on the floor, right? And then he would march the prospective GM over that piece of paper and see what they did. And a Four Seasons quality GM would, even though he's walking and talking and maybe a little bit nervous about an interview because this may be a great opportunity to go, do whatever, if he stops and picks up that little piece of paper, which isn't in his hotel, right? It's not his job.
But it's a part of your DNA.
But yes, but he understands that shouldn't be there. I have the ability to fix it. I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to go, hey, you should get a houseman to go clean up that piece of paper. There. Right. Sort of thing. And that set the tone. All of a sudden, that didn't necessarily give everybody the job. But I'm pretty sure, and John would downplay this when you talk to him about it. He'd go, "Oh, well, who you would think I would do something like that? I wouldn't stoop to a trick." But again, you look at that and go,
"It's an indication."
What a great little technique to figure out.
I can give you a real case example. Just happened with
how observant. What do you need in a GM? You got to be observant. You've got to, set an example. You've got to have a service oriented. All these things. This one little stunt.
Well, again, real case example. Just I was here at the Hyatt in New Orleans, and I went into my room, and I had the other two bays of the whole grand ballroom that has 5 bays. 3 of the bays were being used for the general sessions, and I had the other 2 bays for my group. So I had this massive room, massive, 2 bays of the ballroom, and I went in to set and ready it for my function the following day, and it hadn't been bussed yet. And miscellaneous stuff. And then dude, I don't know. I can't even count how many rooms I've had to turn and burn back in my hotelier days, you know. So no big feat. I walk back of the house, find the cart, wheel it up, and I start busting the tables. I mean, I want to get some of the stuff done for the room and flagging the tables that I need to change linens on and stuff like this. And I'm changing the stuff, getting things set up, and the AV guy comes in and he starts helping. It turns out they had left the AV guy to turn the room. I guess
really.
Whatever it was,
because it wasn't a third-party AV company; they had their own internal AV. Wow.
So he was, and I'm doing the whole thing, and he's pushing. And I'm talking to him, being friendly with him. I was like, "Hey, what's your name?" Oh yeah, I'm going to be in the session tomorrow. So, I'll be your AV guy tomorrow, so forth and so on. And we got talking. And he's like, "Why are you busting the room?" I was like, "Well, because it was dirty, and I want to get it set up. Nobody worries." He says, "Oh, thank you. I mean, that saves me some time, and so forth and so on." And we got talking, and he goes there and says, "We had the screens on at the time." He says, "You know what? I think that's the crappy projector. I'll get you a good one."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I could have had my whole session where one of my two screens was the crappy projector.
Absolutely.
Instead, you build the relate, and it's like, oh, you know what? You're a nice guy, and because that, I want to be a nice guy. Well, nice breeds nice, you know. And it's like, you know what? I think we put you up on a crappy projector. Let me get a good projector for you.
Well, and let me tell you, Paul Charette, who's responsible, a great hotelier, but also used to be general manager of Little Nell, was GM at La Quinta. La Quinta, the resort, not the motor inns thing, but he also responsible for introducing me to my wife. But when we opened, again, I'll tell another old Four Seasons story since I hit the 1984 thing. This is actually earlier, 1982, when the hotel opened. There was a big problem because at the time there was one 5-star hotel in the state of Texas, the Fairmont in Dallas, right? And there were a ton of upscale luxury hotels opening all over and this was from like 1980 to 1982 when this property opened. So this guy had to figure out, where am I going to find staff? And Braniff Airlines had gone, basically, well, they had a huge number of flight attendants who had been furloughed because of the air traffic controllers strike. And then Braniff started to plummet and go out of business. He picked up a bunch of ex-Braniff people. So he found our night manager was a former 747 captain. So you're kind of like, well, that guy should be able to handle emergencies and responsibilities.
Yeah, right. Calmly, too. It sounded like he's being calm.
And almost our entire front desk team, we had one person from the Hyatt, one person was a new Cornell graduate, and the rest were former Braniff flight attendants. And let me tell you, I have never seen a better front desk group than that. And the Cornell hotelie was the short, awful, right? One of the worst. No. This, I don't know if you ever. We had a little competition because I worked closely with the night audit guys because handling. I started in marketing and sales with them, but then flipped over and took over the systems. So I did a lot of stuff with the night audit guys. Do you know a record? Is there an industry record for number of adjustments on a folio? This individual, this young woman, we believe set at least a state, perhaps a national record at 28 adjustments.
Holy wow.
Oh yeah. Oh no. The night audit guys would wind up not bidding their schedules, but picking schedules based on her schedule, because they'd set like a month in advance for the front desk, and the audit guys were kind of 2 weeks out. They would see when she was working and go for other dates, which was very funny. But let me tell you, the Charette's philosophy was, these guys are emergency trained. They deal with customers constantly. They have limited control of what's going on. I'm sorry, I didn't make it rain and make the plane late. I didn't lose your bag. I didn't do your I'm just here trying to save your butt if this thing goes down. That's my primary job. So he put those folks in, and let me tell you, every person who came up got treated as an individual, because these guys had all worked first class and knew how to deal with a customer. And if they could do something nice for the person, they would. They were given the rein to go. I mean, not crazy, just like, oh, you're cute, you get the 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 presidential suite sort of thing, but it's whatever. They did a fantastic job of trying. You said all these little things of what the people want, right? They want efficiency. They want this. They want to avoid problems. They figured this stuff out innately when the person, with a smile, made the person feel great, solved their problems, got them moving along their way, and unbelievable team, right? Yeah. So, and that's what you have to do. I mean, if you want a great hotel. Right. Yeah, the surly person who's overworked and no eye contact, doesn't care about you, is asking the same stock questions, with the same stock responses.
I got told once, and I remember this as a statement: you don't dull the rest of the blade so that it cuts the same.
That's a great. Boy, talk about hotel branding theme. That's a great one, right? That's the old don't do anything special for these guys because they'll expect it at the next hotel, and we don't want them to be disappointed with the crappy thing that's our standard, right? Yeah. Yep. The minimum standard is not like that. Should not be the absolute peak experience they can expect.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that has been burned in my brain for so long that's what I used to tout as mantra. When I tell people on alley rallies and NETMA meetings, which is nobody ever tells me anything, it's like, remember, folks, we do not dull the blade so it cuts the same.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's one of
my little infamous quips that popped up that
that's very good. Well, hey, we have 15 minutes left. I don't know, are there any things that caught your eye in the news topics? Well, I mean, we had the Y hotels. We had Y hotels turns luxury apartment buildings into pop-up hotels. We actually talked about that a little bit, which is pretty. By the way, interesting concept.
Did you know that there is a gay Airbnb?
What do you? So a residential rental
Mr.
type
B&B.
thing.
Mr. B&B. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
It came up in conversation, and it's silly for me to not to thought that maybe there's some spin-offs to Airbnb, and this came up in conversation, and it's like, well, I'll be darned. I mean, I had heard that there's variations to Airbnb, but I've never pursued them or anything like that. But there is some segmentation that goes on with these things because some communities and cultures, it's good to know whom you know that are comfortable with your variations in lifestyle, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that makes some sense. But to bring to a point, and this goes to why the conversation was inspired by this, is that you have to consider everybody that you want to do business with and what it is that they use to discover with you, and don't look at always being a traditional methodology. That they're always going to use Google, and they're always going to use Brand or Expedia or what have you. That sometimes there is community-based methodologies. So it was neat.
Yeah, and those get very, very complicated. And the same thing happens in the group space, right? It's the classic don't have, what happens when you book Pepsi, Pepsi Cola company versus, Coca-Cola, right? It's like, you'd better change out all the soft drinks in your bars and things like that, depending if you don't do this. And people go, oh, that's ridiculous. And you go, well, it is not ridiculous. That is life or death, sort of thing. But you wind up with situations where you go, this is great. Here's a great, a great piece of business, LGBTQ. Well, boy, if you wind up having, if you wind up having the white nationalists in your hotel at the same time, this may not be good. Sort of thing. And the question, that a lot of people frankly is, should you have either of those? How do you deal with this one versus the other? And that's how you develop your personality for your hotel. If you want to be super whatever, catering to whatever, niche group you'd like, for good or for bad, that can be a fantastic thing, but you also may alienate others, right? Which you just have to figure that out and then stick by your guns and go, here's why we're doing this. We talked
about that from pet friendliness, is that, you get the business, but then there's who either don't like pets or are allergic to them, and you're stealing them from being with you. But your Ruh-Roh is kind of funny because I was actually thinking about writing a little short article about things that I check when I travel, and I have two more to add to that list. But if you want to go through the Ruh-Roh is 7 things to check your hotel.
Well, and I have a problem, a major problem with this rut row too. So we may want to go through it.
Well, check for bed bugs. Yes, I mean, it's silly. I mean, it may sound like I'm being slightly, but knowing how rooms are cleaned and how they're not cleaned and the cycle of their cleanings and so forth, I actually carry a UV light with me.
You do? Well, there you go.
A little click one that I just have. Plus, I have a UV sanitizer that I hit the remotes and the faucet taps with, just because even knowing they're clean, I'm not bringing cleaning supplies with me, but that UV, the light pretty much kills everything. But I'll hit the UV light in the dark room when I first walk in, just to see where I need to be worried about. And the bed's part of it. So the checking for bed bugs is another one of those things. But cleanliness, unfortunately, the second one that they pointed out, that's a hard one, because rooms, for people that may not know this from the industry side, go through a cycle of cleaning. There's general daily cleaning that housekeepers use and do when they're turning and making ready your room. And even that has variations. A room that has to be turned to be set and ready for a new guest certainly has a different cleaning cycle than one that's being cleaned while you're still the guest. And then it should, but what are some of the problems associated with that is, hey, we have these massive check-ins, and again, this is the not understanding the personas, right, of who your guests are and when they're coming in and how they behave, and all of a sudden it's like, we've got to get these rooms, we need 5 rooms now, fast. We need set readies now. We need now. They're now, and so they'll shortcut the cleaning processes. If the glass doesn't look like it was touched, then it gets left for the next. Unfortunately, things like that. But there is also deep cleaning cycles that rooms go through, maintenance cycles that go through. There's high dust cleanings. There's furniture movement. There's FF&E repairs. And there's all these schedules of things that go on that take rooms in and out of inventory. And of course, during high season, those rooms don't get taken out of inventory because they're constant turn and burn. So you're most likely to get the most deteriorated cleaning event during high season, that even though they're busy and they're replacing guests in that room, the actual depth of cleaning in that room during high season is the least out of the entire year, because it just can't be afforded to be taken out of inventory cycles. So cleanliness is the thing I would say as a caveat to that statement. Cleanliness of what you're going to engage with is important to check.
Yes.
Cleanliness as to whether there's dust bunnies under the bed, unless you plan on being under the bed, are not a necessary component to checking a room for cleanliness, although the dust bunnies are there.
But again, people will freak out if they see the dust bunnies, because they're like, well, if that's there, what can't I see? And I'm now going to,
which is why I'm going around with a UV light now.
That's interesting, because again, and then I'll just dwell on Four Seasons, and again, same period. The absolute bottom line for the most valuable staff member of a hotel to Isidore Sharp was the housekeeper. Just hands down, not even close to any other role, including the general manager in the hotel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue the general manager sets the tone and everything, but if your housekeepers aren't performing, you're screwed. You aren't going to overcome that.
Right. I told you, though, I used to do in my meetings where I went over and asked everyone when we did a general meeting in my hotels, it's like, what is the one person in this room that doesn't need to be here for this hotel to run? And everyone would make jokes to each other. It was like, it's me, because I'm not cleaning the room. I'm not checking the guest. I'm not preparing the food. And I'm not serving the food. And I'm not preparing the banquet space. So you are the most critical component in housekeeping. Abso-freaking-lutely. If housekeeping fails at any level, it is an indication of the entire product, period.
Right. And the recovery from it is horrific. I mean, it's just really, you want to kill your TripAdvisor reviews. Have something where, I mean, this is my daughter when she studied abroad in Sevilla. She went to 17 cities in 9 countries while she was over there, right? She would go out, she would start searching for a place, she'd figure out, going through a little booking funnel. And she would come down to what I always call the validation step, because I use a 7-step process, which is, kind of the inspiration, research, planning, validation, which is step 4. Everybody drops out. Then you get the booking. And that's where traditional travel agencies live. That's where TripAdvisor lives. So she'd go through TripAdvisor and look for dirty, bed bugs, or rude. those 3 words, all of a sudden you were off the list.
Right.
And maybe should like, oh, it was just one. It's got, 5 circles and it's perfect. And one person put, but it was the same person used all 3 words in one review, and it just seems an outlier, right? But I mean, if you did that, it was just you're out, and that's and you aren't going to get the ADR, you aren't going to get the traffic. It's
And this goes to what we're talking about with the housekeeping and so forth. We know that there's different levels of cleaning because there's different things that get cleaned more regularly. I think one of the other items in this list is the comforter. Remove the comforter. Any sort of unfortunately, hotels have ventured away from this. The cosmetic runners and so forth in rooms. Although some of the more resort-driven ones still give you too many pillows that you don't use that never get cleaned. They're the decorative pillows. Don't. Just take them off the bed. Because people don't know what to do with them, and they usually throw them on the floor, which means they just
on the floor. Absolutely.
Yeah, but yes, there are some things, from a comfort perspective. Look for stains. I always pull back the bed to make sure that the linen was changed and not just recycled. That the comforters don't have residuals because they weren't just fluffed or put back on, whatever. The other one that I will always recommend, and it's kind of funny for this, I don't want to get up and reach over for, but I actually bring a small CO2 smoke detector travel one with me. And I say that because, ironically, in the realities of some things, maintenance of the hardwired ones in the room sometimes have a cycle. And they don't, until they test those systems, don't know sometimes that some of the indicators don't work.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just a fact of product. Nobody's being shortcutting on their service cycles. That's what testing does. If you've been at a hotel where they test the fire systems, okay?
No. Quick little aside, hotel data conference. I checked in. I had an early flight in on Wednesday, right? So I'm doing some work in the room. My smoke detector, I was not smoking in the room. Or I thought it was a general fire alarm because it's one of these really annoying, loud sound sort of thing. Like, oh boy. So I kind of go out in the hall. I don't really hear it other places. I'm like, really, this is kind of weird. And I called down. They go, no, we don't have any general alarms. And it's like the thing's going off the back. I go, well, I got one. Sort of thing. Like, we'll check into that. And it was kind of intermittent. It was start inside, but I'm like, is it getting tested? I don't know what the story is. But anyway, this went on for 20 minutes on and off. And I kind of went down the hall, and it seems to only be my room. So I finally went downstairs and just went, hey guys, I don't know if I need another room, but we'll check on, and and they were very nice. They actually, I brought down my computer. They said, oh, can we get you a drink? There are places where you can get Wi-Fi, this sort of thing. Got me set up, which was nice. Gave me a little $15 voucher for use on F&B stuff. So they did all that stuff very nicely. But I'm looking at the fire panel, right? Because I've been around hotels, and the fire panel is always there near the front door because that's where wherever the firefighters are coming in is probably where you want to put that panel, sort of thing. So anyway, they wind up. I'm looking at it, and it says smoke detector alarm, room 320, and I'm in 329. So it's not even the right. And so I'm like, and it's flashing and it's going, and it's like, okay, this is it. It's a smoke detector. That's the alarm. The numbering is messed up. And this hotel had opened like a couple months before. I'm just like, oh dear Lord, this is not. And what did they do? The next day I checked out. I slept overnight. Everything was fine. Next day, looked down. They just silenced the alarm, still flashing. 320 smoke.
Which is why, ladies and gentlemen, I bring a portable smoke CO2 detector, because to one of the points of this article that we're saying is not necessarily route road, but it does have flaws in this list, obviously, is when you go in the room, there is a plaque on the back of the door to tell you where the closest stairs are. It's there for a reason.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or we should go through this list, right?
Okay.
Just really quick. First, check for bed bugs. Yes, personal experience at a hotel in Paris. You should do that. That was the one we didn't. And my daughter said she always did. She did not do it. And yes, we had them. It was not good. We got out quick. It was miserable, right? Yeah. General cleanliness, you covered, the surfaces. Now, again, some of the things that saying is you should bring your own liquid spray bottles and things.
Yeah.
No, you should not. How are you going to travel with that? They're going to leak in your luggage. You're not going. You're going to get confiscated at TSA.
That's why I bring I mentioned my UV light, the one that sanitizes. That's what I use for the.
Yeah, make sure the mini bar is stocked. Yeah, I don't really do that anymore.
I've gone so far as to every once in a while putting a piece of tape on it, because this is just telling you the horror stories of things. That staff do know that guests get charged for stuff, whether they know what they're getting around it. And so what the staff tends to do, those that are not as scrupulous and honest, is as soon as a guest checks in, they'll hit the mini bar, cap and tap and put it back. And either it's omitted, or they took the vodka bottle and refilled it with water, and you're getting charged for it, and you can't say that you didn't because the door got opened, it got closed, you got lifted, it got put back. So checking the status of it, I put tape on the door sometimes of it just to see if somebody got into it after I saw it. And like I said, but that's a minor thing. Removing the comforter we talked about.
And most of them now, at least for the move and things like that, I can go, I was not in the room at that time. Go check your videos in the hallway and things like that. I wasn't there. I didn't touch the thing because, again, I never touched the mini bar generally.
The other is the emergency plan, which we just talked about. Which is
remove the comforter sort of thing, which maybe. But then again, they said usually it's just for show. You'll be warm enough with the duvet, and others. The duvet may be just as bad as the comforter.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. So they really skipped over that one.
Now, I would
the emergency plan you should do. I mean, just
also to add to that one. Okay, is if you are in a room that has an adjacency to it, where there's a door for adjacency.
Oh yes.
Just don't assume that it is already locked.
Absolutely, yes. If you have a connecting door, make sure
check that the door is locked. Yes.
Yep.
Because unfortunately, things. Anyways, but that's a safety precaution to it as well.
Yeah. And actually, what I do is find out if the other person's door isn't locked. I'll call down and just say, hey, the connecting rooms were open.
Right.
I've locked mine. Can you go up and lock theirs? Which I don't know if it happens or not. But the make sure the thermostat works was kind of interesting. I mean, if the room's extraordinarily hot or cool, I'll generally check that.
Yes.
But and I normally do kind of check the therm, but they're like, make sure it's working properly. And they basically say, go in and turn it way down or whatever, and wait for the room to cool down. And you're like, that takes a long. If you do all these things, you are having a miserable check-in. Oh, wash the glassware.
Yeah.
Again,
I do.
You do. Okay.
I do actually.
I will eyeball it and basically go. I'll sometimes wash it. It kind of depends.
A couple of things. If I'm going to use the glassware, I'll wash it just out of courtesy. That's a safety thing. If they have prepackaged cups, I always use those. The plastic ones that are filled up for it. I would also say that for your ice bucket, always use the plastic bag, and don't just put the lid that's provided on top of your ice, because God knows what the lid does. Close the plastic over the top if you're going to put the lid on top of it. Well, they take the lid off
and put it on the counter.
But just don't put the lid back to it. And here's just one that is, to be candid, something you should do, but it's not necessarily a shared topic, and that is see how the toilet flushes.
Oh, yeah.
Is it a strong flush or a light flush? Because, people may overuse the toilet, and now you have the wonderful experience of having housekeeping come up to plunge your toilet because you're a little too ambitious with the use of it. You know what I mean? So
let me tell you, we were put into 2 rooms. This is in Lubbock, and I will call them out. Extended Stay America was one of the worst. The first one, the toilet was not functional, right? And they were kind of, and it was a busy weekend. It was like parents' weekend. We're just like, sorry, it doesn't work, sort of thing. We can't stay in. And they're kind of like, well, what do you want us to do about it? It's like, give us another room. They gave us another room where we had to wait for a while. It came out. The general manager comes out with an armful of towels, which are sopping wet. It's like, what the hell? It's like, is there a problem or a flood? Because and they're like, oh, well, we just saw them. We saw them do it. Then they gave us that room. We're like, what was that?
What was that?
They're like,
was
oh
that?
no, that was just we're cleaning. Like that's not how you normally clean.
Well, okay, and the other
that toilet was leaking. They had some sort of newfangled, modern toilet, sort of thing.
Well, the other is with the shower. Test the water and make sure before you turn the water on that the head isn't turned on, so you don't start your shower.
Oh, I always do that.
Yeah,
well, I don't do that.
These are little things.
But my theory is make sure your housekeeping staff is doing all of these things right, so the guest never finds anything in your hotel. Because if they never find anything, they will suddenly start going, hey, you know what? I don't have to check this when I stay at these properties because they're always perfect. Yes. Sort of thing.
Well, and you save
them time, you save them worry and aggravation, because I can imagine, you're checking in with a family or something like that into a place and going, okay, kids, stay here. We've got to check for bed bugs. Kids freaking out, right?
Yeah.
At whatever age.
We got to see what our shows come down to. Talking about how to flush a toilet. That's what our shows come down to. Make sure you check the toilet and whether the hot water hits you on the back of the head because you didn't turn the faucet in the right way.
My rut row was really for the hotels making the shortcuts, and the rut row is if you're training your guests, you have to do all this stuff to worry about if the room is even clean. That's not a good thing. That is a rut row for the industry.
That's very, very true. Very true. Mr. Robert,
so we're running late.
Yeah, we're running late now. But thank you.
Can I show one other thing that came up earlier that I really wanted to mention? Whoops, let's see if I can find it here. And okay. Branding. Again, we mentioned that all these hotel companies have all these different brands and things like that, right? Well, let's look at, this is my little Android. I'll see if I can focus up. Here's my little thing with hotels, right? And you can see you've got best. Oh, are these backwards? Are they showing backwards to you?
No, they're looking front. They were looking front.
Oh, okay, that's good. So we got Best Western. Wyndham. Whoops, we blanked out there. Oh, sorry. But look at Marriott. It's blue.
Yeah.
How did Marriott? They changed it to blue. And look at Hilton is black, and they're normally blue. Sort of thing. And also Hyatt. So it's like Marriott, you were always red. Now IHG has gone for the orange, as Choice, and has Caesars, right? So you kind of look through all of those and go, well, is orange and blue, did they run all the sets? Because now Best Western, Hyatt, Marriott, Wyndham, and Hilton. Now Hilton is only in black here, but they're normally blue. They're all going to blue. Choice and IHG are going to the same shades of orange with that. Is this a color study that people looked at and said these are the most conversion, they click on them most? Or if I'm Marriott, I want to stay red. That's an iconic. So I mean, you do have all these sorts of brands, but why do you want to be exactly the same color blue as Hilton? Which is now exactly the same color blue as Wyndham and exactly the same color blue as Hyatt. You kind of go, I don't get it. Yeah. So anyway, that was going to be my row, but there wasn't really an article on it. So anyway.
Mr. Robert, thank you as always. Thank you for the topics and of course the links that we didn't get to that we only hit a couple of them in discussion and talk about a few others.
Nobody will ever see.
But the list that you create is the most endearing thing that most people, and it is still to my amazement the fact that no matter where I go and get to speak and so forth, meet people, there is at least one, if not more, that go on to say, "I listen to your show." And
there were some. I mean,
did anybody introduce themselves?
Why wait? Oh, what?
I told people to look you up. There were some people that were going to go and come to the conference. Robert's going to be speaking. Go over and introduce yourself and so forth and so on. So I don't know if anybody came up to you to say that.
That's okay. But people will say that they look at it, and people who get copied on this list do enjoy the list.
Yes,
but there were some interesting ones. Why Wayblazer shut down, I thought was a very interesting article. Hospitality Technology had their 2018 Customer Engagement Technology Study, plugging in the digital minded consumer. There's some good stuff. We need to figure out how to, get this thing. I do have to do some work on my website and really get it
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is
Gutenberg is causing me a little bit of problems with WordPress. So
yeah, well, I can tell you that one of the things I've talked with people in solicitation, they would like to have a understanding what our conversation is going to be going into the start of the show. Right now, they rely upon the fact that they go and listen to the show and my minute by minute breakdown, that they can go and say, "Oh, I want to hear about that part." They go to the minutes in there, so they don't have to go through the whole 2-hour spread. They would prefer that we start the show with, "This is what we're going to do." Yes. In what sequence, so that they
actually do it
and actually do it. So we're going to have to add into it. We'll have our time to pontificate and to tangent and everything else. But I was thinking that if we don't have a guest host that show in particular, that here are the first four, the first 3, 4, 5 things, and in order discuss them. Not saying that they have to be confined to a time slot, but just that's the sequence of discussion, and then from that we can pontificate afterwards or something like that. So we'll work on all those things. But we are over. But thank you. And for those who want to know where to find you, Mr. Robert, where can they find you?
You can certainly find me at rockcheetah.com, a somewhat dated WordPress site which really does need a refresh. So it's not awful. I mean, it's everything's scoring quite nicely, but it just needs a little bit of an update.
Painter's House needs a little painting. That's what.
Need to do that. Or Robert K. Cole on social media.
And for the repeat of this show, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. You'll see a link there, or you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/159-2, which is the show number.
Very good. And actually, an interesting note is that I had my 12-year Faceanniversary, which I didn't even know was a thing, but I was on Facebook in August of 2016, and they didn't even really open it up to the public until like September 15th of 2000. So I don't know. I must have been on like in some sort of beta or pre-test group, or I don't really know how I got on so early. But
you bleeding edge person, you.
That's me. Yep.
Robert is always
painfully early adopter.
Early adopter. Thank you as always. And we'll see everyone for show number 160 next week. I'm not traveling anywhere next week, so I will work out why. Well, I know why. I want to put the wrong time block on this link. We weren't supposed to have until 11:30 tonight, folks. That's why it wasn't coming up for us to start, but fix that pretty fast. But as always, thank you so very much. And we will see each other, I hope, next week, Friday, 11:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 Central, for show number 160.
I will be here. So,
bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.